Coach, like that music there?
Yeah, I was just going to ask. Your daddy must be picking that music out.
Yeah, I am.
Yeah. He and James, they meet before the show, and they go over all the music that's going to be
pick
played.
out some more Otis Redding stuff.
Yeah, Otis Redding's good.
Hey, before we talk football, tonight, Coach, the NBA lottery is going to be picked. And, one player can just possibly in recruiting can change, or in the NBA or NFL can change the whole outlook on a program. If the New York Knicks could possibly get the number one pick tonight and then take Zion Williamson, could that change the whole deal for the Knicks there, Coach?
I think in any sport, when there's a one dominating player, great talent, great character guy that can rally the other people, it's amazing what one guy can do. And you go back to whether it's one great one in basketball, those other four will play a little bit better. And in football, I think I mentioned to you before, when you got a dominating player in the front four, and you got a dominating linebacker at the next level, and if you got just one dominating DB, watch how good that defense is. Those other guys will play better. So, and one dominating pitcher, it's amazing. Baseball, what that can do. So, I don't think there's any doubt one guy can make a big difference.
No.
Well, Barry's got a football question he wants to ask you. I can't remember exactly the.
Well, I just like Dad is really pumping sunshine in Tennessee, Coach. I mean, he believes in Tennessee. I want to remind him 2 years ago they were 0-8. This year they were 2-6. So they're what is that's 2-14 in the last 2 years.
Those years are over.
Alabama plays South Carolina. Their crossover games are South Carolina, who was 7-6 last year, and Tennessee, who was 5-7, 2-6. But everybody just rips Clemson. They don't play. They play in the worst conference. But if I look at this, Curley, Arkansas was 0-8 last year. Ole Miss was 1-7. Auburn was 3-5. Tennessee 2-6, Vandy 3-5, Missouri, who was real 4. I don't think there's a big difference between the ACC and the SEC on those middle to bottom teams. Maybe at the top with Georgia and LSU and Alabama, but is there a big difference in this? Clemson deserve the criticism they get? Not criticism, but people say, well, they don't have to play anybody. They got a path right to the championship. I don't think there's a ton of difference in these two leagues.
I don't think there's that enough of a difference to favor one side or the other. And of course, geographically, the SEC fans for each school and as a whole, they're going push and brag harder on the SEC, and I imagine the ACC people do the same thing. But when you throw the facts down there, look at the records of certain teams. Now the top 4, 5, or 6 teams in each league, I think it's pretty even, and so I think that's a bunch of fans that like to talk and brag on their conference and their team, and so sports writers do it to create controversy. Talk show people do it to create controversy. But when you line up and play, naturally there's a little bit of separation consistently between Alabama and Clemson for representing their conference.
Yeah, they just. I don't think Alabama's that far. People get mad at me. I don't think Alabama's that far ahead of Georgia, but there's a little gap there. But everybody else, they are. Where Clemson, I don't know if there's anybody in their league that's close to them. Does that make it where when you look at these two teams and you start going down the conference, they've just gone so far ahead of these other guys, right? Or is the gap not as far as I think it is?
I think they're those two teams are a little bit ahead of everybody else in their conference, with Clemson more so. But you go to the SEC now. Georgia's made great progress in closing that gap, and that's they had a chance to win a couple of big games and didn't. But Georgia's pushing Alabama. It'd be interesting just how much LSU has improved, and they recruit and they got talent. If they got a dominating quarterback, LSU can be in the hunt. So, and a lot of the other teams, my Aggies, they still need about another 2 years of recruiting, and they can be in the argument. But those two teams in their respective conferences are way ahead of everybody else.
Does Jimbo Fisher get a pass for the shape that he left Florida State in? To me, it looks pitiful over there. And I hate to blame Willie Taggart for 1 year, but the talent level looked down. Now, I know he had some personal issues going on, and a lot of times coaches will see that thing about ready to blow up, and they move on. They stay one step ahead. Should he deserve maybe some of the criticism for the shape that he left Florida State in?
To a certain extent, and what you do, you go back and you just look at the talent that is left when you leave a place, for whether it's your own choosing or someone chooses for you to leave. Just look at the talent that is there, and so I think in Jimbo's case, I think he's an outstanding football coach. His consistency there for the majority of his time. But when a place like A&M, that facilities are they're as good, if not the best in the country, and the talent, high school talent in the state of Texas, and then the bottom line is the money offered. So I think he does deserve a little criticism, because undoubtedly he left it not quite the talent that he received it when he got there.
That's a good point, Dad.
Well, he knew he was going to leave.
Yeah.
He probably didn't work as hard. Probably.
Well, recruiting is the name of the game to start with. That's the pedestal that's the starting point. And like you were talking about, one guy was talking earlier about Zion, but talent makes a difference, makes you a little bit better coach.
Let me ask
Hey,
you this,
Curley, can the two freshman quarterbacks beat Oregon from Auburn?
Oh, they would have a chance. I like both those quarterbacks. What little bit I've seen of them at Auburn, and I imagine he's going to probably play two quarterbacks and let them both develop. But the rest of the talent around them has got to be good to have a chance. Now you put a load on a young quarterback, you better have it simplified where they've got a chance to perform. And both these pups, they are young. So the rest of the talent is going to decide do they play young or do they play a little bit a year ahead of schedule?
The offensive line is critical.
Oh, you can go up front, defensively and offensively. If you've got good talent up front on both sides of the football, you got a chance to win. And so that's going to be a big key. I'm not sure what their talent level is. I think Auburn's got some young offensive linemen that are good. There's a kid up in this area that I'm anxious to see him play someday. This Cameron Stutz. I got to know the kid a little bit, and he looks the part. So young kids like that, they come around and play a little bit better than you're supposed to play a year ahead of schedule, and sometimes that can happen. But so it's that's going to be the ace in the hole is if their offensive line can develop.
Yeah,
they're going to be good defensively now.
Coach, I'm going to give Nick Saban credit here. Not that he deserves. Everybody knows how great he is, but I think one of the things that maybe people don't understand that you and Dad and I will understand. A lot of times, I've seen a lot of guys in college basketball, college football. The money they're making now, they really grind when they get going, but then they start making so much money. Now they got access to where they can have beach houses and all the different luxuries, and they literally just stop recruiting as hard. They don't recruit as hard as they used to till they got to that point. Nick Saban is, and I think Kirby's this way as well. Of course, he's still young, so we'll see. Can Kirby do this when he's in his 60s? but I don't think people understand how good of a recruiter, how hard this guy who has everything in the world, $9 million, a beautiful place at Lake Burton, an island at the beach, according to Dad. He can go and do whatever he wants, but he still is the most relentless recruiter, has the most relentless recruiting staff around him, and most people, they relax. Have you ever seen a guy do what would do it? Now Kirby's doing it, and I don't know, can he do it when he's in his 60s? Have you seen guys that have gotten successful, and then I don't want to say the word lazy, but they don't work as hard as they used to? Well, this guy never lets up. I don't think people realize that. Could you comment on that?
Well, you hit the nail on the head, and I've mentioned several times. The recruiting. You put that word at the top of the list that has to do with success, and I don't think Coach Saban has ever forgotten how to do it, and surrounding people around him that understand that, and the technology now of all the different ways of finding a player, a dominating player, and he's got, you can call it the organization, the process, whatever you want to call it, but he'll never forget the most important thing is recruiting great talent, recruiting great character. Sure, you're gonna make a mistake sometimes on how you evaluated him as far as the talent. Sometimes you're gonna make a mistake on how you had him graded in his character. You're never 100%. But Coach Saban and his staff and the traditions at Alabama, they're not going to make many mistakes. And I think you can probably put what Clemson is doing in the early stages of what they've done. So,
but have you seen coaches get later in the career and they've made a pile of money? They let up, don't they, Coach? They stop grinding like they used to. The majority of them, where this guy never stops.
No, I think you're right, Barry, what you're saying there, and maybe you pull from so many areas. Go do this, go to speak here, speak there, speak here, and that phone's ringing every day to come get the Coach John Doe to come speak at that. And sometimes you can spread yourself a little bit too thin, and then the most important thing is what's going on in that office and the organization of those players and the future players you're recruiting. And I think Coach Saban has limited. He has a set number of speaking engagements, and he's not going beyond that, because when you overload yourself, and I personally, I never turn down a request. I'm a dumb fanny, and it'll just drain you. And Coach Saban's, he's got it set. This is the places I'm going and the places I'm going to speak, and that's it. Then back to the most important thing is those players, those young guys on your campus, and the young guys at those high schools. And he's got it down to a T.
Yeah.
Well, I think the thing that makes it so ironic to me is that when I was there watching Coach Bryant operate, they didn't go out of state. They went out of state some. They might have gone to Tennessee and gotten somebody, but they didn't work at it the way Coach has his staff working at it. That's the shocker to me. He was able to win, and when he won early, he was able to get into some doors, and he was able to get in some guys could come and play that were out of state. And then he kept winning, and he kept recruiting out of state along with in-state, and nobody ever said anything about when is he going to take all these in-state kids. If they weren't good, he didn't take them, and didn't get criticized for it because he kept winning. So I think the difference there is what Coach Bryant and them, outside of getting Joe Willie because of Tom Nugent calling Coach about him, wanted to get him out of there. They just didn't. They go to Tennessee and get one. They might go to Florida and get one. As far as recruiting out of state, you would say they didn't.
Yeah, Coach Snellenberger had a lot to do with the follow up on that of getting Joe Namath to Alabama.
Yeah, I was with
Howard. Talking about out of state recruiting, Wimp. We're sitting in a meeting one time. Coach Bryant thumping around there, and he said we might be wasting our time in Florida.
Yeah.
He's down there, and he said all that dope down there, and all them girls running around half naked and all that. I said,
that's Coach.
He said we're wasting our time on these Florida
Exactly
kids.
right.
And
But-
Coach Grisk.
But the staff, Coach Grist was in charge. He did fine, but they just weren't organized to go out of state. They went out of state when they heard about somebody that had Alabama ties.
Yeah, and Coach Bryant, Clem gave him that list of since they've been at Alabama of all the Florida kids that had played there, the current ones that were playing there, and he said, well, no, we probably need to kind of keep recruiting Florida a little bit because there were a bunch of outstanding players in the state of Florida that played at Alabama.
Well, you just couldn't. You didn't have any idea when Coach Bryant came to Alabama. There was no limit on scholarships. Very quickly, it turned to 110 or something. You know more about that than I do, but I think it was unlimited when he first got there.
I just remember the days of when you could sign 50, and from unlimited to 50, then down to 25, and
Make some mistakes at 50.
Yeah, Coach Bryant I think he felt like if you signed 50, and if it's not important enough for about 25 of them, then those would be gone.
Right.
And,
All right. So you guys just said that Coach Saban is a better recruiter than Coach Bryant. They worked at it harder.
They recruited different.
Yeah, it's different because you could take so many guys back then. But I think you guys would agree that Coach works at it harder than Coach Bryant did. And it is different. Who, as far as Xing and Oing on the field, who was better at that? Do you guys have an opinion on that?
Yeah, Coach just listened to when they decided to go to the Wishbone. He just got his people together, went to the Holiday Inn, studied it for about 3 days, and went to it. That's about it.
Coach, who was better on the field, Xing Oing, Coach Saban or Coach Bryant?
I think Coach Saban. If you get on the chalkboard and talk schemes and talk all this, all the deep parts of a particular play, a particular defense, I think Coach Saban is probably better. But what Coach Bryant, he delegated. I mean, like what Wimp was talking about, Malmore and all that bunch. And they brought Emory Ballard in from Texas, and Coach Royal and Coach Bryant were super close. And anyway, when Coach Bryant tells that offensive staff, he said, I wanted A through Z, find out every damn dead-gum thing about this wishbone. I'm tired of throwing the dead-gum ball around and going 6 and 5, and so find out everything. Then they presented all this to Coach Bryant, and he said, we're going with it, sink or swim, and that was it. And he said, study it A through Z. So
and by the way, we're on our way to Southern Cal to play them the first game of the Wishbone.
Yeah. Coach Bryant, the area he grew up in, you playing 8-man fronts and 2 backs and not many formations and that kind of stuff. It was the trend back then, but I think Coach Bryant could adjust with any of them for what he wanted to do. But the game was different back then, but I think Coach Saban he can get on the chalkboard with an individual coach on either side of the football, and or the whole staff, and he can talk it A through Z. And Coach Bryant delegated. He was going to have great coaches that he thought could figure all those A's and down to the Z's out. So he delegated, and I'll promise you, they were going to get it done.
Well, Coach, as always, you throwing out any sand today?
After I got a doctor's appointment to go find out why I'm not sweating, and then I've got 2 loads of sand. I'm halfway through with 1 load, and after I get through with this doctor's appointment, I'm putting my boots on and I start throwing that sand again.
Appreciate you, Coach.
All right, y'all have a great day.
Thanks, Curley.